One of the things that has struck me these last weeks is just how many people seem to be finding solace in nature. And I'm one of those people. The quiet, the lack of traffic, the bird song, the permission each day to just go out and walk. It has, for me, been permission to slow down, to engage with the world around me. And I don't even need to leave my house to do this. There is a lilac tree leaning over from my neighbor's garden that just now, for a week or two, is in bloom. And its perfume just comes in through the kitchen window. Then there's the screaming song of the swifts rocketing over the rooftops of my road. They have just recently returned from the southern hemisphere. And if you're very lucky, even here in Cambridge, you might hear or even see the peregrine falcons, which nest in the towers of our churches and libraries. There's something about the natural world that draws us and soothes us, even in these difficult times, perhaps especially in these difficult times. And if you're not in the habit, and if you can, because I know some of you are shielding, and perhaps some of you live in places where you cannot find easy access to the natural world. But if you can, walk out, enjoy it. Don't take your headphones, but go without them, open to what you hear and what you see. Go and listen and watch. And if you're lucky, you might experience something of what the American essayist, poet, and ecologist Wendell Berry called the peace of wild things. This is a poem of his of that title.
The peace of wild things. When despair for the world grows in me, and I wake in the night at the least sound, in fear of what my life and my children's lives may be, I go and lie down where the wood drake rests in his beauty on the water, and the great heron feeds. I come into the peace of wild things, who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water, and I feel above me the day-blind stars waiting with their light. For a time I rest in the grace of the world and am free.
The Peace of Wild Things by Wendell Berry. But of course, it's not all peace outside. And the blossom on that lilac tree will wilt. And those swifts rocketing along the rooftops are hunting some very unlucky insects. And those peregrine falcons currently gracing Cambridge are an existential threat to your average pigeon. And sometimes even to us, nature is a two-edged sword. After all, a virus is part of nature. And one of the unnerving things about this pandemic is that it reminds us that we too are part of nature. And therefore we are vulnerable. We are sometimes even prey. To be part of nature is to be, to use another word, a creature. Part and only part of an interconnected web, dependent on so many other things. We do not have the God's eye view, and we have maybe less control than we might at first have thought. We don't last forever. We share in the limitedness of all living things. And that is not easy knowledge to accept. And maybe that is why conspiracy theories about this virus are so common. Perhaps it is easier for us to believe that this is all some human action, some human plot, maybe even a human mistake, than to believe that this is something which, in the world that we live in, sometimes just happens. That it is just unusually sharply indicative of the kind of creatures we are and the vulnerabilities that we carry. Last week, I spoke of my conviction that we live in a world made and held by an inexpressible and unfathomable love. And that belief is still there. But it needs to be held in tandem with an understanding that the world held by that love is sometimes difficult for us to live in. Being a creature, part of nature, even a creature loved by a creator, isn't always experienced by us as a straightforward blessing. And a lot of ink and a lot of tears have been spilled trying to solve how both of these things can be true. How love can undergird the universe, a universe that has in it such beauty and peace, but also such loss and transience. And I'm not going to solve that problem in a short online meditation. But I might just mark that the book of the Hebrew Bible most concerned with that problem, the book of Job, doesn't really solve it either. It doesn't really try to. Job is the proverbial sufferer, a man who has experienced his vulnerability as a creature, as everything that he loves is taken from him by illness and chance and natural disaster. And when he understandably questions God about this, what does God do? God offers Job a poem about the beauty and the wonder of creation. It's a poem that is too long to read here, except in parts. It's a poem that addresses Job, in his very creatureliness, and asks him, "Where were you?" To read some parts of it. Where were you when I laid the foundation of the earth? Tell me if you have understanding. Who determined its measurements? Surely you know. Or who stretched the line upon it? On what were its bases sunk? Or who laid its cornerstone? When the morning stars sang together, and all the heavenly hosts shouted for joy. Have you commanded the morning since your days began, and caused the dawn to know its place? Where is the way to the dwelling of the light? And where is the place of darkness? Have you entered the storehouses of the snow? Or have you seen the storehouses of the hail? Can you bind the chains of the Pleiades, or loose the cords of Orion? Do you know the ordinances of the heavens? Is it by your wisdom that the hawk soars and spreads its wings towards the south? Is it at your command that the eagle mounts up and makes its nest on high? God goes on like this to Job, in increasing detail about all the wonders of creation, asking and repeating the question, where were you? Was this your doing? Is it an answer to Job's question? On one level, no. It merely refers him and us back to creation and to our limited, transient part in it. As we too, to use Barry's phrase, live beneath the day-blind stars that wait with their light, and learn to find the peace in that, even in our transience, even in our vulnerability, as we learn to discover that even in that, we are loved and we are held. Amen.